Hello, Blooming Grove. This is Pastor Mike again, coming to you from the bunker. I want to give you the next iteration of our study through Isaiah. Isaiah is there's themes in Isaiah. The biggest theme in Isaiah is "I am the Lord, and there is no other." So uh, the Lord is making an exclusive claim. But it also talks about his servants, his servant Israel, his servant Cyrus, his servant Jesus. It talks about judging of the nations and the bringing into the kingdom. And another big theme that I want to hit on today is from chapter 47, and it's about Babylon. And what I'm going to do is have uh, the Blue Letter Bible read us this chapter, and then I'll make a few comments on it.
Chapter 47. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no more be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Remove your veil. Take off the skirt. Uncover the thigh. Pass through the rivers. Your nakedness shall be uncovered. Yes, your shame will be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not arbitrate with a man. As for our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit in silence and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no longer be called the Lady of Kingdoms. I was angry with my people. I have profaned my inheritance and given them into your hand. You showed them no mercy. On the elderly you laid your yoke very heavily, and you said, I shall be a lady forever, so that you did not take these things to heart, nor remember the latter end of them. Therefore hear this now, you who are given to pleasures, who dwell securely, who say in your heart, I am, and there is no one else besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know the loss of children. But these two things shall come to you in a moment, in one day, the loss of children and widowhood. They shall come upon you in their fullness, because of the multitude of your sorceries, for the great abundance of your enchantments. For you have trusted in your wickedness. You have said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge have warped you, and you have said in your heart, I am, and there is no one else besides me. Therefore evil shall come upon you, you shall not know from where it arises, and trouble shall fall upon you. You will not be able to put it off, and desolation shall come upon you suddenly, which you shall not know. Stand now with your enchantments and the multitude of your sorceries, in which you have labored from your youth. Perhaps you will be able to profit, perhaps you will prevail. You are wearied in the multitude of your counsels. Let now the astrologers, the stargazers, and the monthly prognosticators stand up and save you from what shall come upon you. Behold, they shall be as stubble, the fire shall burn them. They shall not deliver themselves from the power of the flame. It shall not be a coal to be warmed by, nor a fire to sit before. Thus shall they be to you with whom you have labored, your merchants from your youth. They shall wander each one to his quarter. No one shall save you.
So in that chapter, you hear a lot of the characteristics of Babylon, her pride, when she has the audacity to say, I am, and there is no one like me. That's what God has been saying throughout the book of Isaiah. So she actually makes that claim, Babylon does. Her brutality, the Lord used Babylon to discipline his people, but they went overboard and they were more brutal than they needed to be. Uh, her idolatry, known for occultism and other gods and many gods. And so Babylon becomes synonymous with the world, the wicked world. Babylon has a long history. It got its start in Genesis chapter 2, where we read, Genesis chapter 10, beginning in verse 8. Now Cush became the father of Nimrod. He became a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. So Shinar and Babel and Chaldea, those are all synonyms for Babylon. From that land he went forth to Assyria, and he built Nineveh, and Rehoboth, and Ir, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is a great city. So Nimrod is the first inhabitor or king or conqueror of Mesopotamia. He's where this all gets started. And it says he's a mighty hunter before the Lord. Don't read that like he, could kill a deer at 500 yards. He was a conqueror. He was a ruthless man. He was one who subjected peoples to himself. That's what the mighty hunter means. In fact, in the Septuagint, that verse is the mighty hunter is translated gigas or gigos. He was a giant of a man, a predator, a conqueror. So that's the kind of man it was that set up the kingdom of Babylon in the first place. Kind of reminded me of Revelation 6, where the man on the white horse goes out conquering and bent on conquest. That was Nimrod, and that spirit of Antichrist has been running through the kingdoms of Babylon ever since. You know the story of the Tower of Babel, how they all got together on the plain of Shinar and said, let's get together and build a tower. So lest we be scattered, let's make bricks and harden them with fire and use tar for mortar. And they said, let's build a great city for ourselves and a tower that reaches to the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered all over the world. But the Lord came down and took out to look at the city and the tower and the people we're building. And he said, look, the people are united and they all speak the same language. After this, nothing they set out to do will be impossible for them. So Babylon was a highly advanced civilization. You see them here burning bricks and using mortar and high-tech kind of stuff. In fact, on the Ishtar Gate, which was in Babylon, there is a brick that is glazed with a blue glaze. The tower is actually in Berlin. They dismantled it and reconstructed it in a museum in Berlin. But that color of blue requires a specific temperature, to maintain a specific temperature. So these folks, and scientists have a hard time reproducing that glaze even today. These folks were very advanced. In fact, God says nothing, if we let them speak the same language, nothing will be impossible for them. So that's the beginnings of Babylon. Now, while we were in Isaiah, we've been hearing about Nebuchadnezzar. He was the king that Daniel interpreted his dreams, and Daniel said to him, you're the head of gold, you're the king of kings, you're the lion with the four wings, you're the greatest kingdom ever. And Nebuchadnezzar believed it and set up the statue and tried to make Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego bow down. And you know the story, they wouldn't do it. And the Lord delivered them out of the furnace. But that's who was in Babylon in Isaiah's time. And that kingdom too was to be judged. Ezra says, but because our fathers had provoked God, the God of heaven, and he gave them into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the Chaldean, who destroyed the temple and deported the people to Babylon. They said, the Psalms say, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and wept, and we remembered Zion. How can we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? So Nebuchadnezzar was responsible for deporting and exiling all those folks just after Isaiah's time. Babylon had a future from Isaiah's time. Isaiah, in many places, prophesies her destruction and her total destruction. Isaiah 13 says, the oracle of Babylon, concerning Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amos saw. Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans' pride, will be as when God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah. So their judgment was coming, a judgment like Sodom and Gomorrah. It will never be inhabited, nor will it be settled from generation to generation, nor will the Arabian pitch his tents there, nor will the shepherds make their sheepfolds there. But the beasts of the desert will lie there, and their houses will be full of owls. Ostriches will dwell there, and wild goats and the caper will dwell there. The hyenas will howl in the citadels, and jackals in the pleasant palaces. Her time is near to come, and her days will not be prolonged. So Isaiah prophesies that God is going to completely wipe out Babylon as a civilization. and it's going to be inhabited by wild animals. It's funny to me that it says here that their houses will be full of owls. When I was in Iraq, which is where Babylon used to be, I was getting ready to give a Bible study in the chapel tent one night, and this little owl flew in there. And I thought about this verse. I thought, that's a demon owl. He's going to try to disrupt my Bible study. So we couldn't have Bible study until we got that owl out of the tent. Many other prophecies about Babylon in Isaiah. I won't go through them all, but Isaiah chapter 21 says, fallen, fallen is Babylon. Isaiah 43, he says, for your sake I have sent to Babylon to bring them all down as fugitives. Isaiah 47, which we just listened to, come and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Jeremiah also predicts Babylon's fall. Now, Jeremiah was alive at the time that King Nebuchadnezzar came and took all the Jews into exile. And Jeremiah says, because, this is Jeremiah 50:13, because of the indignation of the Lord, she will not be inhabited, but she will be completely desolate. Everyone who passes by Babylon will be horrified and will hiss because of all of her wounds. And again, Jeremiah 51:1. Thus says the Lord, behold, I am going to arouse against Babylon and against the inhabitants of Lev Kamai, that's Chaldea, the spirit of a destroyer. And how Shishak, that's a cryptogram for Babylon, how Shishak has been captured, and the praise of the whole earth has been seized. How Babylon has become an object of horror among the nations. So her immediate future, according to Isaiah and Jeremiah, was that she was going to be wiped out and uninhabited. But then you come to a very interesting verse in Zechariah, where you see that there is still a future for Babylon. I'm not sure that it's the Mesopotamian Babylon. I kind of think it's more symbolic of a world system. But in Zechariah chapter 5, verse 11, Zechariah is seeing a vision, and he sees a woman who is put into a basket or an ephah. An ephah is the standard measure for grain. It was a basket for grain. And the woman is cast down into the basket, and the woman is called wickedness. And over the basket is put a talent of lead. A talent was the standard measure for metals, for weight. So you have this sense of commercial, of weights and measures, and then this woman named Wickedness being captured and put into this ephah or this basket. And two storks come and lift up the basket. And Zechariah says, well, where are they taking her? And the angel said to Zechariah, to build a temple for her in the land of Shinar, that's Babylon. When it is prepared, she will be set there on her pedestal. So it's an indicator that some wicked economic commercial system is going to rise up in or near the land of Babylon again. And we're going to see where the Lord judges that final system as well. Babylon was not only a literal place, but it becomes symbolic of a wicked, rebellious world system. It's the spirit of Antichrist. Isaiah 14 is talking about judgment of the king of Babylon, and then he lapses into judgment of Lucifer, the star of the morning, the devil. That's who empowers and innervates those kings of Babylon. Peter wrote from Rome, and he calls it cryptically Babylon. He said, she who is in Babylon, chosen together with you, sends you greetings, and so does my son Mark. So Babylon becomes known as any kind of wicked city can have the moniker of Babylon. And again, like I said, Babylon will be ultimately judged. The world system of commercial, religious, political system will be judged. Revelation 14 says, another angel came and said, fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great, she who has made the nations drink the wine of the passion of her immorality. Revelation 17, and on her forehead and on her was written a mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and the abominations of the earth. So she's the source of all the idolatry and harlotry in the earth. Revelation 18:2. And he cried out with a mighty voice, saying, Fallen, fallen is Babylon the Great. She will become a dwelling place of demons and a prison for every unclean spirit and a prison for every unclean and hateful bird. Those hateful owls, right? So ultimately, she's going to rise again, at least in spirit, probably physically, to be judged by the Lord. One of the things that Isaiah says, and here we're kind of getting to brass tacks, that was a whole lot of history about Babylon. But Isaiah says to the people, come out, get out of Babylon. Isaiah 48, go forth from Babylon, flee the Chaldeans, declare with a sound of joyful shouting, proclaim this, send it out to the earth and sky. The Lord has redeemed his servant Jacob. So he wants his people to get out of Babylon. Jeremiah again, for thus says the Lord, when 70 years have been completed for Babylon, I will visit you and fulfill my good word to you and bring you back to this place. Interesting thing is that of all the millions of Jews that were exiled, only about 50,000 came back. The rest of them were comfortable in Babylon. And I fear that many Christians have become comfortable in Babylon. We don't even recognize how we live in the ways of the world, and we don't come out of Babylon. Now, this is a tricky question because we're in the world. We have to deal with the world. We have to witness to the world, and yet try not to be contaminated by the world, right? This is how Jesus put it. He said, I have given them your word, and the world has hated them because they are not of the world, even as I am not of the world. I do not ask that you take them out of the world, but keep them from the evil one. So even Jesus didn't say, go to a monastery and wall yourself off so that you won't be tainted by the world. He wanted us in the world. He just wanted us to avoid the contamination of the world. Paul wrote to the Corinthians and said, I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with immoral people. I did not at all mean the immoral people of the world or with the covetous or the swindlers or the idolaters, for then you would have to go out of the world. But he said, when I wrote to you, don't associate with immoral people. Don't associate with any so-called brother, somebody who's saying he's a Christian but is not. So again, we are called to live among this system of Babylon, this wicked worldly system, and yet not to be too cozy with it, right? Paul wrote again to the Corinthians, do not be bound together with unbelievers. In other words, don't enter into a contract with them. A lot of times we look at that and say, well, that's marriage, and certainly does apply to marriage, but just about any kind of a covenant or close relationship where you're bound together with an unbeliever is probably not going to turn out well. Do not be bound together with unbelievers, for what partnership has righteousness with lawlessness, or what fellowship has light with darkness? So we have to have a heart of wisdom when we look at this and say, well, what do I need to do to flee from Babylon while still maintaining a witness to the Lord? And especially when in our times, when we're so polarized and, we're dealing with far left radical folks and the big tech ramming their agenda down our throats and controlling our lives. It's kind of feeling very Babylonish to me. So I'm going to tell you what my applications are from this, and you can make your own, get with the Lord and decide what it means to you to get out of Babylon, to flee from Babylon. One of the things that we're doing, that I've done recently, is I'm divorcing myself from big tech as much as possible. I canceled my Facebook account. I don't want to support them anymore. They are, in my view, not helping America. I have migrated from Google to Microsoft, and I'm trying to wean myself off of the Google addiction. So I'm trying to be less enmeshed with all those systems while still maintaining the ability to minister and live in a high-tech world. The other thing that I'm doing is we're probably going to move all of our investments to a company called Guidestone, which is an investment company for Christians, and they invest only in healthy, righteous businesses. They don't invest in bad things that might make a lot of money, but they're wicked. So we're looking at rolling over all of our investments into a more morality-based investment system. I would say too, I've confessed to you in the past that I watch all these murder shows on TV, and the Lord convicted me that you probably don't need to be rejoicing in that wickedness or being entertained by that wickedness. So I've stopped watching those murder shows. But there's just so many ways that the world weasels its way into our lives, whether it's entertainment or art or the technology. We are so, I think, blind to the number of ways that we are comfortable in Babylon. So I'd encourage you to take a look at what you're doing and ask the Lord to reveal to you where you need to be changed. You gotta stay in Babylon, but do so as a Christian and as a witness for Jesus Christ. All right, y'all. I love you. Hope to see you back in person very soon. Bye.